tell us, how does a guy go from being a Middle East expert, government official, Iran, terror financing, et cetera? How do you transition from that into writing a book about Israeli innovation? How did that happen?
It's that story started in the summer of 2014. Like many of your listeners, I came to Israel for the summer. I actually arrived. I'll never forget. We left the United States on July the 4th, 2014. My kids were very angry that they missed the fireworks, and we landed on July the 5th. And I went the following day to enroll my child at a little preschool in Jerusalem. And the preschool owner, she looked at me when I walked in as if I had grown a second head. She said,
Were you wearing those glasses?
I was just thinking that.
Why?
I was wearing the pink ones then. She said, Mr. Jorisch, what are you doing here? I said, what do you mean? We've spoken before. I'm here to enroll my child at your preschool. She said, haven't you heard? There's a war that's about to break out between Hamas and Israel. You ought to go home to America where it's nice and safe. And then it was my turn to look at her as if she had grown a third ear. I said, first of all, we are home. And second of all, no one's going to steal my child's birthright. Enroll him at your school. And she did so, albeit reluctantly. And then a few days later, I heard the most horrible noise I had ever heard as an adult, as a parent in my life. I heard the sound.
Was it a Donald Trump speech?
It was the sound of the code red on the radio heralding the beginning of war. And I want you to know, I looked at my sleeping toddler in the back seat, and my stomach literally turned, and I thought, oh, this is not safe. It's one thing to come as an adult and make that decision to come to a war zone. It's quite another to bring a toddler. And I knew exactly what was coming. We went home to our place in Jerusalem, and we went up to our apartment. And we did tubby time, and we did story time, and I put my toddler to bed. And I waited about 3 hours, and sure enough, the sirens wailed, and I took my terrified, almost 2-year-old down 4 flights of stairs into the bomb shelter. And I want you to know that my neighbors looked more terrified than my toddler. And we hung out there for about 10 minutes, and then our building violently shook. Yeah. The booms. And most listeners may or may not be aware what that sound is, but that was the sound of history being made. That was among the first times in human history that a missile went up into the air and another met it in mid-flight. It was the wonder and the awe of the Iron Dome. Up until that moment in time,
Unbelievable.
We would only see that sort of things in Star Wars, right? Because laser up, laser down. That for me was the beginning of an obsession with tech, generally, and specifically Israeli technology. And over the course of that summer, it was the most amazing summer of my life and the most depressing summer of my life. On the depressing side, my friend and colleague Steve Sotloff was beheaded by ISIS. You had in Lebanon, you had Hezbollah that had a vice grip over the country. In Egypt, you had basically terrorists running around the Sinai Peninsula, and obviously Hamas was shooting rockets and building tunnels into Israel. That was on the one hand. On the other hand, I got to experience the wonder and awe of Israeli technology and began to realize that Israeli tech was influencing and improving the lives of not millions of people, but billions of people around the world in the realms of medicine, science, agriculture, water, AI, space, you name it. You have Israeli tech that was really impacting deeply the lives of billions of people around the world. And that was a story that I knew I needed to tell. And it was a story that I was not aware of. How is it possible that a country the size of New Jersey has more startups combined than Canada, India, Japan, Korea, and the United Kingdom combined? And outside of the United States and China, how is it that Israel has more companies listed on the NASDAQ than any other country in the world? That was a story that I knew I needed to get to the bottom of, and it required some digging. That was not an intuitive story to find. Everyone is aware of the fact that Israel is the startup nation, and it truly is the startup nation. But what really is the secret of Israeli innovation shocked me as someone who's been coming to Israel my whole life and spent a significant amount of time. It even surprised me. The story of how deeply embedded this technology is in our lives, and specifically our lives to make it better, was a story that I was not aware of.